welcome to Slator Pod, another working from home week, global lockdown. How are you, Esther?
Good, yeah, I'm well, thanks, Florian. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm actually still going to the office from time to time because the office is in a kind of an standalone building that's completely empty because
Yeah,
the marketing agency or events agency that occupies it is doing full working from home. So I'm practically alone. There's just
yeah,
one more individual, and I'm cycling the work. So in London, you have to fully work from home. Like it's all from home. You can't leave unless you have like essential grocery shopping or
yeah.
yeah,
Grocery shopping and exercise,
exercise.
and and if you're volunteering,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little less stringent here. They still let construction run. Public transport still running to some degree. They're saying it's about 80% of the economy is working and 20% is shut down. But I mean, those are
Oh, okay.
massive numbers, right? Well, okay, we have a pretty somewhat special episode today. We have an interesting topic to start with, interesting and weird in many ways. We're talking about LSP selling face masks through LinkedIn, or LSP, I should say. It's a single LSP. Then we're talking about suing your clients in Canada, and that's not a small client. That's one of the biggest buyers of translation in the world. Then we're going to unpack RWS's trading update they gave yesterday to the markets, and they're seeing some early. I mean, obviously we can get some early indications of how the pandemic is affecting the translation industry.
Mm.
Then we're going to talk about Hamilton, a Swiss American company that's producing ventilators and testing kits for coronavirus testing. And then you're ending on the National Register of Public Service Interpreters in the UK, and
Yeah.
their demands or their concerns that they've shared with the government about the working
Hmm.
conditions of interpreters. Um, all right, so let's talk about that LinkedIn message I got, and many others got a couple of days ago, 3 days ago, from a salesperson, or at least I got it from a salesperson. I only speak for myself. I didn't. I only saw another LinkedIn post about the topic, which we'll mention in a second. But I got a LinkedIn message by a salesperson of a Chinese company called CCJK. So yes, I'm mentioning the name here, on purpose. So CCGK, they pitched that they have masks to sell. So let me just read you the LinkedIn message. So they're saying, please let me know if you're in urgent need of face masks, and then they listed like N95 for kids, for adults, disposable masks, and then she will go on and say, actually, we're not specialized in sales of face masks, but we're a translation provider serving thousands of clients of potential customers globally. And then she said, as you know, our price is only 1/5 of that generally posted in your local drugstores. And then a few other kind of salesy language, some other salesy language. So I was like, whoa, that in my view, and I'm happy to say, I think that's completely inappropriate. I don't think, an LSP should be hawking sales masks to their clients and prospects. I mean, we're not even a prospect of them because we're not an LSP, so they didn't even do their homework there, but pretty inappropriate. So what I did was, I actually went into a back and forth with her, kind of inquiring a little more, well, so
Mm.
how would, I always phrased it very carefully, how would someone pay if they wanted to buy those masks, right? And
Yeah.
what would be the price if somebody, and then, yeah, there was some back and forth. So apparently, if the amount is not too big, they ask you to pay by PayPal and send the screenshot, and then they send a complete price list with like 50 cents for surgical, $4 for N95. I have no idea if those are appropriate prices, but look, I mean, I just, we were seeing a lot of the industry stepping up and doing fantastic work and fantastic, pro bono work and supporting and doing pro bono projects, and then we have companies like this that try to profit from this. Although I have to say this is a single first example of this I'm seeing, and I feel it's appropriate to call them out on it. And there was somebody on LinkedIn. So I thought I was maybe not alone, but I didn't think this was a mass email. But then I saw somebody on LinkedIn from a buyer even that posted that she's been pitched those masks. And then there was a very active thread on LinkedIn below around how is this appropriate or not, and cultural differences, etc. But, you know, I've lived in China for a long time. I don't think this is cultural difference. This is just very inappropriate behavior by a company. So I did reach out to them, to a more senior person, but never heard back. And just so, you know, gave them a chance, and let's see, maybe they continue trying to do that.
Bizarre.
Very bizarre. Indeed, very bizarre. And yeah, it seems like profiteering off a global pandemic is not the thing you want to do right now. Because otherwise, as I said, I really see the industry coming together. There's so many webinars, there's community, there's remote community building, there's, you know, all of these very positive, great things happening with, you know, everybody coming together in these times. But then you see something like this, and again, I felt appropriate to mention it. On a very different, but also not on a happy note, Esther, talk us through why Canadian LSPs are suing what must be one of their biggest buyers.
Yeah, so the story from Canada is that a class action against the Translation Bureau of Canada, or rather the Attorney General of Canada, since it's a federal entity, so there's a class action that's just been given the go-ahead to proceed by a court in Canada. So the LSP, named as the plaintiff in the suit, although it is a class action, is claiming that one of the clauses that it signed, one of the clauses in the contract that it signed with the Translation Bureau is effectively abusive. And they go on to list a few different claims, but the one that seems to be pretty central to the lawsuit here is one around translation memory. So the claim is that the Translation Bureau's translation memory is flawed and polluted. This is a quote from the class action. Flawed and polluted, yeah, and it hasn't been revised according to standard practice, apparently. So the upshot of this, or the result of the flawed and polluted TM, the LSPs are claiming, is that because obviously TM discounts or TM matches are applied, effectively the match rates don't actually reflect the actual work needed. So, for example, at the moment, I believe that, well, according to the class action, they are paying 50% for fuzzy matches, I think up to 75, if I remember rightly, and 25%, above that amount, and then 25% for 100% matches and repetitions.
Just, sorry, 50% for anything above 75, right? Up to,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, and then obviously everything below that would be new words paid at 100% of the per word rate. Yeah. But as a result, so the LSPs are saying that they're losing time and money because they're actually spending more time, and they're seeking reparation for all of the people, all of the members who participate in the class action. So obviously it's a bit, yeah, go ahead.
Just to repeat, so the Translation Bureau of Canada, huge buyer, is now being sued because LSPs are telling or claiming that the translation memories or the quality is so bad that reimbursing them 25% for 100% matches, or 25% of the fee for 100% matches is actually not enough.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
It's abusive.
Well, that's the English legal language, right? It's always very,
yeah.
For non-English speakers, it always
like
sounds. Yeah, sorry. The English and American legal language for non-English speakers like myself always sounds kind of hyperbolic, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I was saying, so massive translation buyer, as you said, according to the class action, Translation Bureau outsources about 75 million in Canadian dollars per year to LSPs. And they also handle about the same amount Canadian dollar wise internally with their 700 translators. This was all listed in the class action. So yeah, major buyer, obviously. And we obviously sort of reached out to various parties here for comment. So we spoke to the lawyer representing Quattro Translations, which is the main plaintiff, or the plaintiff. And he said, the lawyer said that there are 3 different associations in Canada who've already sort of signed up to say that they're going to participate in the class action. And also others are apparently seriously considering it. So we did actually reach out to ALIA, which is one of the language industry associations in Canada. And we had a comment from the president of ALIA, Robin Ayoub, who I know we've mentioned previously on the podcast. He said that the ALIA is seriously considering signing up to or joining, becoming involved in the class action. He said that a lot of ALIA's members work directly with Translation Bureau of Canada, unsurprisingly, and that some of the association members had already raised issues about the quality of Translation Bureau's TMs. And he actually said that ALIA had already written to Translation Bureau in March of last year, in 2019, to raise some similar concerns around the quality of the TMs. And he said that the arguments in the class action are compelling, but they do recognise that obviously it's a contentious issue because it's quite subjective when it comes to quality. So that was a comment from the association. We did also reach out to Translation Bureau, who didn't really want to make any specific comments because obviously they said the class action is before the courts, but they did say that they're committed to providing high quality services through an open, fair and transparent procurement process while obtaining the best possible value for the government and Canadians.
Yeah, that's like a
so obviously,
boilerplate quote.
Yeah. And that will now the case will be heard or will proceed, and we'll provide some follow up as and when that story evolves.
So I think before the podcast we had a brief conversation about what's our kind of editorial what's our opinion on this. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, the quality of this must be really bad. I mean, I'm speculating. I haven't seen anything, but I mean, in order for them to sue, I mean, even if it's a government entity. And you could argue there's a lot more transparency than, in the private sector. But for them to sue over this, I mean, that must be such an enormous headache, that quality, because 25% for 100% match, if the TM is actually well maintained and high quality, is not bad. I would argue it's pretty good. I mean, I remember pricing models that were more aggressive, 15, 10%. Yeah. And there's obviously probably a fair amount of LSPs that would even ask some people to just click through and almost like for free. Skip it. Mm-hmm. So getting 25% on 100% match means you actually get time to review it a little bit. So the quality must be atrocious for them to then go to the length of suing a client. And I mean, ALIA is largely a business association, right, of LSPs. Yeah. So for them to consider joining this class action it's pretty strong. So this is not just a couple of disgruntled, maybe boutique LSPs that, for some reason harbor a grudge. But I mean, this is literally the private sector in the language industry going against their biggest client. So it will be very interesting to see how the courts evaluate this because,
that's what I was thinking as well. Where do you even start? I mean, are they going to conduct an independent review of the TMs and then somehow make some call? Are they going to work with another agency to then sort of to do that? Somebody who would not be involved in the class action lawsuits. I mean, and how do you even begin to say what's appropriate, what's not, and how much tolerance is there? Because I mean, every TM that you're ever going to see is going to have some issues. So
I mean, it's the classic whatever goes in.
Yeah, and that's what Robin Ayoub was saying, that it is obviously pretty subjective and elusive. I think he said.
Yeah, I mean, Robin's been selling and building businesses in this industry for 20 plus years. So I mean, he's had a few quality discussions in his professional life.
I imagine
before. So it's So the way the courts will evaluate, what you probably could call evidence here, or, that the case will be super interesting. I mean, again, as you said, will they appoint like an independent evaluator of this? And then, how are you gonna assess this? Because this is not a few $100,000. This might go into a few millions, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, one thing that just occurred to me as well is that potentially, obviously, again, neither of us have seen the TMs, we don't know, but potentially also there's technical issues here. If you think about, uploading previously translated text or files to a TM, you can also have technical issues that occur. So who then is responsible for that? I mean, is there any danger that, for example, the TM provider might be dragged into this whole thing, or where does it sort of lie with, where does responsibility lie with Translation Bureau versus potentially either translators who have previously sort of translated that content for them, which the LSPs are now saying is erroneous and flawed. So it seems like there's a lot of potential parties and stakeholders involved in this one sort of centralized TM. I don't know
how. It's a little circular maybe as well, unless the internal translators are feeding most of the TMs. So if those TMs are fed by externals, then it's kind of like the LSPs are complaining about their own performance in a circular manner, but we don't know what's in those TMs. So
exactly.
Anyway, let's move on. We had a Slator Pro article we published yesterday around the results, RWS's results / trading update. We spoke about this before. Those are stock listed on the stock market. Those companies, they have to update their investors from time to time. So what they did yesterday was provide an update on their financial first half, which starts in October, ends in March. So those are half year results. It's not the full results, but it's a trading update. But there was a lot of interesting information in there. First, the revenues now were, for the first time I can remember since covering RWS, were actually down marginally. So we're down 1.8% to like 170 million pounds. They didn't talk about the divisional performance, but RWS, they have 3 units now. They kind of reorganized a little bit, and now it's RWS IP Services, Life Sciences, and Moravia. Those are the 3 units. So they didn't talk specifically about the individual units, how they did in terms of financials, but they did provide a few examples of how also the current environment has slowed down things over the past few weeks, probably. Overall, they also said that the deferment of certain new projects for clients slowed it down, the delay in the time taken for some new clients to come on board, and then there was generally lower volumes of activity in IP services in certain segments of life sciences. Now, they didn't really specify if this was even before the pandemic really started to slow things down. But what was interesting, they also confirmed some of our initial assumptions, right? We said life sciences and some big enterprise IT are not doing too badly. And overall, even though it's affected here, RWS says, it's actually, they're confirming this. It's that there's no major collapse in demand right there.
Yeah.
So when I say big enterprise IT, that's obviously the Moravia portion. So they said that they actually sold additional services to the groups, to quote unquote RWS's technology customers who are recording higher usage of their online communication social networking platforms. Well, so that's, Google, Facebook, all of these companies, as we probably mentioned either a week or 2 weeks ago, they're seeing increased usage. I mean, they're seeing a pretty strong pickup in demand. So if you're providing services to these big enterprise IT companies at the moment, probably it's certainly not the hardest hit area there, and it's probably holding up quite strongly. And life sciences, I think people should probably read the article. I mean, it's quite complex. So on the one hand, again, there was a slowdown, then they had some reorganization, but they also saw some initial signs now that because of those vaccine trials, for example, they're actually seeing a pickup in the linguistic validation work there as well. So so there is actually a certain boost to demand from that, but it's very early days because they cut off obviously on. We're only 2-3 weeks in, but it's an initial glimpse at what's in store for the broader industry as well. Because RWS with life sciences and enterprise IT actually cover a kind of a fair chunk of the overall market. They also, of course, they mentioned that we also reviewed an analyst report by a brokerage firm called Berenberg, which covers RWS, and they highlighted the very flexible cost base of RWS. But then, of course, that's kind of true for the entire translation industry, right? I mean, you have a lot of fixed costs, particularly freelancers, which, you know, if volumes are down, you're unlikely to outsource more. You're probably going to pull back there a little bit. And then the analysts also highlighted that RWS is very strong in terms of cash. They have a lot of cash or liquidity accessible to them. I think they have about 30 million pounds in cash sitting in the bank, and then another 110 or 120 in loans that are committed. So they will get through this. They will get through this period quite well. And then likely after this, we'll be poised to do a few acquisitions once the market kind of gets out of this immediate shock right now. Overall, the analysts at Berenberg there, the brokerage firm, they're very positive. And on RWS as a company, and I think it's not a perfect proxy for the industry because, you know, RWS is big and strong and has access to capital and is listed, but it's also not the worst one because in terms of the operations, the client model, I mean, it is somewhat of a proxy for the industry as a whole. And just closing up, the shares in RWS are up now 22% since the bottom only a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. So that's a pretty strong rally, but they're still down 20% in line with the overall market since the start of the year. So, you know, holding up fairly well. All right. Let's talk briefly about a company we featured this week called Hamilton.
Not the musical.
Not the musical. No, that one's canceled. Or postponed or shelved. So Hamilton, that's a Swiss-American firm. They're headquartered in Switzerland. In fact, when I go to my favorite mountain resort, I always drive past them and I always wonder what is it these people or this company's doing, because they're expanding. They're basically, they put a huge new factory on a plot, on kind of an empty plot of land. So in Hamilton, they have two major divisions. One is called Hamilton Bonaduz being the place they're headquartered in, and then Hamilton Medical. The first one's doing med tech, including testing, equipments for, among others things, coronavirus tests. And that's the unit we interviewed. And then there's Hamilton Medical that does ventilators. So they have, I mean, they have like an FAQ on their website now, like what's the sequence of ordering, etc. They had a huge Swiss government contract, you know, thousands of ventilators. So obviously that part of the business is doing very well. I mean, they're extremely busy. Let me put it this way. So we reached out to John Bailey, great guy. I met him 4 or 5 years ago at Gala or Lockworld, I don't recall actually, but he's the technical content manager at Hamilton Bonaduz. So he says his primary area of focus is automated liquid handling for automated laboratory workflows. And they say they have 4 main robotic platforms, and 2 of them actually are fully automated workstations, which he says increase the speed and efficiency of coronavirus testing workflows, right? So it's it's medtech meets manufacturing, and from a translation point of view, it's tech doc, right? It's classic tech doc. So they have about 3 to 5 million words per year for translation. He said they have a sole vendor. The volume spans, you know, specifications, manuals, guides, marketing materials, the whole range. And he also shared that they're using SDL Studio, which is connected to Schema ST4 and a few terminology management systems, and then translation systems via TermWeb. Anyway, read the article. But it's obviously, if you're in a company that's delivering anything that's relevant or that's useful in these times, and the demand is obviously massive, right? And it's also challenging to keep up production. I'd assume actually having workers come in and, you know, practice the social distancing, but apparently obviously they're still producing. So interesting article, and I really very grateful to John for taking the time right now in this extremely busy period to actually, you know, help us and answer some of our questions. All right, next one is National Register of Public Service Interpreters. What's going on there?
So the National Register of Public Service Interpreters, or NRPSI. It's a UK body that represents interpreters in particular. They spoke to us about a couple of issues that interpreters are facing at the moment. So this is a piece that we published earlier this week. The issue seems to be that so a number of interpreters, or those with registered interpreter status, have actually been able to obtain key worker status in the UK. Because of the role that they're playing in the response to the coronavirus. And I think this is the case for interpreters or registered interpreters that are working for the London Metropolitan Police, at the very least. But unfortunately, they haven't been granted the rights associated to key worker status, such as fair pay and safety guidance. This is according to the NRPSI. And we spoke to the executive director and registrar of the NRPSI, Mike Orlov, who also said that it had come to their attention that certain LSPs, and I know we spoke about this last week, had cut engagement fees for interpreters or had begun only paying them for time spent interpreting. So what that means is that, let's say they're booked in advance, these professional linguists, for 2 hours, it might only be that they end up interpreting for a total duration of 15 minutes. So in that circumstance, they would be paid only for the 15 minutes and not for the full 2 hours of their time, which Mike Orlov said was unfair and unethical practice, to essentially book somebody for a longer time and only pay and not pay that full time.
Yeah, I don't get that, also, because I would assume that the LSPs are paid in full by the government, right? So,
well, unless they've had to renegotiate some kind of terms for under, these special circumstances or unprecedented circumstances.
Yeah, but the government probably isn't paying less during these times of crisis, right? Because they should, if anything, they should pay more. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I really wouldn't know. And that's sort of one side to their complaint is the fair pay argument, obviously. But then also, perhaps, more immediately worryingly, is the fact that interpreters are not being given guidance on what's being done to keep them safe during on-site or face-to-face interpreting assignments. So, for example, these public sector interpreters, they would tend to be in settings like police stations and courtrooms. And when they're in court, they normally stand next to the person who they're interpreting for, and do the sort of whispered chuchotage interpreting. And so what they're asking for effectively now is for microphones and headsets that would allow the interpreters to stand at a distance, an acceptable distance in line with social distancing. So, obviously, interpreters are playing a role in this response to COVID, particularly in the public sector here. And it has been raised as an issue already, I think at the beginning of March in the House of Lords, which is the second chamber of the UK Parliament. So kind of helps shape and guide on laws and keeps the government in check. So Baroness Jean Cousins asked was sort of questioning about the guidance and safety aspects, and also asked whether public advice would be issued so to the general public in languages other than English. But apparently nothing had been done as of the 1st of April. So hopefully, it doesn't seem obviously like a good situation, and hopefully they will put something in place to protect obviously the safety most importantly of these interpreters. And then also look at some of the pay considerations as well.
I wonder if the courts here are closed.
Yeah, I know some here have been some here have been going on remotely. I don't know if that's the case for all of them.
Remote courts.
Yeah, remote courts happening. But even if the courts are closed, and let's say for argument's sake all of that is going on remotely or not at all, there would still be the police interpreting that you can't. You can't really stop.
True. Well, hope that gets resolved. So, yeah, we're recording this on a Thursday. We're putting this out on a Thursday because Easter is coming up. So we'll be taking a quick break over Easter. So Friday and Monday we'll be off, and then we'll be back again on Tuesday. Also working on. Hopefully I don't overpromise, but we're working on some remote stuff, webinars, things like that. And then we also have the report coming up, our big market report 2020 in 2 to 3 weeks, depending on also the layout and how fast they can get this done. So, well, thanks a lot, Esther. And
thanks, Florian.
And wishing everybody a good weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hope you tune in next week again. Thanks. Bye.
See you. Bye.